It has been one of those days. You feel mentally exhausted after whatever the day has thrown your way, and you get home and all you want to do is sit back, relax and play video games. We all have those games we turn to in times of fatigue, anxiety, or when we just need to rest and reset. I know I have a handful of games I turn to in these specific scenarios, some different from others. Reflecting on why these games hold the title of comfort games for me, and why they boast some of my longest playtimes, I realised that the definition of a comfort game varies from person to person. What brings solace to me might not resonate the same way with somebody else, and vice versa. So what exactly are comfort games? First of all, let's define what I mean by the term comfort game. As I like to do, let's take a look at the definition of comfort. You can define comfort in two ways, one being physical comfort and the other being mental and emotional. And for this video, we will focus on the latter. This leads us to the definition of the easing or alleviation of a person's feeling of grief or distress. However, when it comes to this definition of a comfort game, there might be some slight deviations from this definition, as in we don't turn to a comfort game only during extreme cases of grief or distress, but more so after a hard day at the office, so to speak. To gain a more formulated view of a comfort game, let's draw parallels with other notions of comfort. We often describe food as comfort food, and we consume comfort food when we want something nice and familiar to make us feel good. A little search brings us the definition as food that provides feeling of well-being associated with childhood or home cooking. So comfort food is not only enjoyable, but it is something somewhat easy for us to make at home while being familiar to us, so we know what we are getting when we turn to our comfort foods, and as a result, we will be expectedly satisfied. Another example we can use is our comfort zone. While this can be used in a wide array of situations, a comfort zone is a situation where one feels safe and at ease. And more importantly for the subjects of this video, the comfort zone can be described as a settled method of working that requires little effort and yields barely acceptable results. This distinction will be crucial as we delve further into the concept of comfort games. A comfort game, therefore, can be defined as a familiar experience that brings us a sense of well-being, often requiring minimal effort while still providing enjoyment. Now let's explore this concept further. When I think of the term comfort games, I often envision cozy and relaxing experiences. Platforms like Steam even have dedicated categories for relaxing and casual games in their store. So to me it seems like a no-brainer that these are the sort of games that fit the job description of a comfort game. Let's take a look at some examples. Duff Romantic, a game where you place down tiles in strategic places to score points. It's considered a relaxing game on Steam. The developer Tucana Interactive described their game as relaxing and calming, with one of its key selling points branded as an experience where you can immerse yourself in a quiet, peaceful world at any time and take a break from everyday life. Just reading the game's Steam store description lends itself to a potential comfort game on face value. The same can be seen for the game Unpacking on its Steam store page. Unpacking is a game where you unpack the belongings of the game's character as they move into different homes throughout their life. If you look at the game's description, the developers Witchbeam describe it as meditative gameplay with no timers, meters or scores, and the game exceeds living up to that description. Another game I have played that also fits the bill is A Little to the Left. This puzzle game has you sorting puzzles containing easy on the eye pastel coloured artwork and a soothing soundtrack. The developer Max Inferno describes their game as a cozy puzzle game at the top of its store page as one of its main selling points. All these titles, along with many others like them, are all trying to sell us an experience aimed at making us relaxed, cozy and peaceful. And all of these qualities feel like the ingredients of what a comfort game should be. Most of them boast some form of feature in which you aren't against a clock, meaning you can choose the pace of play. A prime example of this is one of my favourite relaxing games, A Short Hike. In this game, you step into the shoes of Claire, who embarks on a journey to hike up a mountain to receive phone signal to await a call from her mother. While the premise of hiking a mountain may seem daunting, the gameplay is quite the opposite. A Short Hike highlights hike at your own pace. There's no need to rush to the summit as its second key feature on its Steam store page, emphasising the game's aim to provide a cozy and relaxing experience. And it really does exceed at that. Though while this is one of my favourite cozy games of recent times, I wouldn't describe it as one of my comfort games. The few games discussed so far are all great experiences and seemingly almost purposely built to fit the comfort game definition, as they attempt to tick all the boxes I believe makes a comfort game. The boxes being simple, relaxing and fun. I have a few comfort games and I find all mine are all either turn-based games or games that aren't quote-unquote real-time games. Games where I can take my time and not depend on reactions and reflexes. My most favourite comfort game is Slay the Spire for sure, which while can be complex as you rise up the Ascensions, it's a turn-based deck building game, meaning I'm not rushed when playing. Also, honorable mentions for my comfort games would also be Romantic. As discussed previously, it is incredibly relaxing, largely down to its carefree gameplay in placing tiles to create a mini world. The visuals are nice and cute, but more so the soundtrack is incredible and scratches the itch when you want a comfy and relaxing experience. Also, whichever turn-based strategy game I'm addicted to, at the time of writing, it is Into the Breach. Yet again, another game where I can take my time. And the last honorable mention for my own comfort games goes to the game series and genre I've been playing since my family invested in our very first Packard Bell home computer, Football Manager. I'm not sure what my comfort games say about me, but I know for sure I definitely enjoy kicking back to games which don't make me rush and don't punish me for slow play. One thing I realised observing my own comfort games is that they all lend themselves to high replayability, and you could argue only one of these are considered relaxing, at least if we go by Steam store tags, that is. So this leads me to the point that not all relaxing games would be considered comfort games in my eyes. Comfort food is something you re-eat again and again. Games like A Short Hike are incredibly cozy and relaxing, but due to their almost one and done nature, I couldn't categorize it as a comfort game as I didn't really feel the need to replay it once I'd completed it. So as well as a game needing to be simple, relaxing and fun, I would argue a game needs to be an experience you will revisit multiple times for it to become your go-to comfort game. Before I delve deeper, I want to look at some examples of someone else's comfort games. A good friend of mine is mostly always only on one of two games when I see them online, League of Legends and World of Warcraft. After discussing his gaming habits recently, he explained that he currently jumps in and out of World of Warcraft when a new expansion releases and new content is available. The rest of his gaming time is then spent on League of Legends. Now, on face value, this was baffling to me at first. League of Legends is one of the most anxiety-inducing games I could play. The constant battle of concentration of trying to outplay and outmaneuver the enemy team both strategically and mechanically, all while understanding your abilities, role, environment and the meta. Now that is obviously if you are playing competitively, but I haven't experienced many positive comfort vibes when a part of a losing team in a casual match, competitive or otherwise. It may sound like I don't like League of Legends and that any opinions I have on it as being a comfort game is clearly biased, and that judgment is probably correct, but I do actually like the game, especially when watching high-level play via watching the LEC or Worlds esports competitions. But my opinion on this isn't too important. Now, back to my friend. When asking him what his comfort game was, he did confirm that it was indeed League of Legends, and it got me wondering how that could be due to my aforementioned reasons and I guess my naive view on MOBAs as a genre. Continuing the conversation, he confirmed that he mostly played the game mode ARAM, which is a more simple one-lane style match, which is guaranteed to be shorter than the usual game mode. When asked why he thought ARAM was the better choice for him, he said that it was quicker, less pressure, easier, and he felt zero pressure and it was just a fun game mode. He also made me aware that he rarely ventures out of his comfort zone with the champions and roles he plays, as he has experience and knowledge around said champions, meaning he can rely more on muscle memory, making it a more automated experience mechanically. So before, I thought a comfort game needed to be simple, relaxing, fun and replayable, but League of Legends for me is neither simple or relaxing. The game has a large depth with the knowledge you need to succeed, so whether you are new or experienced, you can't really describe it as a simple game. And surely something can't be relaxing if we don't find that activity simple. Either way, my hypothesis on what makes a comfort game isn't as simple as I thought it originally was. So now I have learned that almost any game could be deemed a comfort game depending on your gaming preferences. The reason for this video was to try and explain how a game could become a comfort game, and I feel like the best explanation I could come up with was to use what is called the 4 stages of learning. With this learning model, there are 4 stages of competence when learning and developing a certain skill, and I think this can be effectively used to describe how game designers create their games, so bear with me on this. The first stage of this learning model is unconscious incompetence. If someone is in this stage of a skill, then this person does not understand or know how to do something, or at the very least doesn't see the benefit to attaining the skill in question, so they disregard it altogether. The first stage isn't really relevant to us in this scenario, as being people who play video games, unconscious incompetence would be a player who doesn't know the game exists, or is so reluctant to want to play said game that they don't even acknowledge the skill level required to partake in it. So we can skip straight ahead to the next stage. The second stage is conscious incompetence. This is where all players begin in most new games. Even for familiar genres, there's a need to adapt to the gameplay mechanics, controls, and objectives. Game designers anticipate this learning curve for both veterans and newcomers, hence the presence of tutorials or easy introductory levels. As players, we enter the game acknowledging our lack of skill, and the designers adjust the early stages accordingly, easing us into the experience. Here we refine our skills and learn from mistakes in forgiving environments. Being consciously incompetent means we recognize our need for practice and persistence to improve on our lack of skill and know-how in any given learning scenario. As we begin to understand the game mechanics, we transition into the third stage, conscious competence. This marks a pivotal moment when playing through a game, where the gameplay starts to feel more intuitive and natural, and we gain a solid grasp on how to navigate the challenges presented by the game. In this stage, we actively recall and apply lessons learned from earlier stages, incorporating them into our gameplay. I also think that being consciously competent at a game is a period of experimentation and refinement, as we are confident of our abilities and are willing to take more risks as we are fully aware of our triumphs so far. As a quick side note, it's worth mentioning that most games tend to shuttle players between conscious incompetence and conscious competence multiple times as new mechanics are introduced. Take for instance a recent game like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which like many Metroidvanias begins by introducing a set of mechanics and challenges that require us to utilize our current skill set. However, as the game progresses, new abilities are unlocked, presenting us with unfamiliar challenges that demand mastering these new, more complex skills. This constant cycle of learning sees players moving back and forth between these stages, adapting and refining our strategies as we encounter new obstacles. This stands in contrast to the relaxing and casual games discussed earlier in the video, which often accelerates players from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence rapidly. There tends to be an incredibly small amount of learning curve compared to games not considered relaxing or casual. Take for instance Unpacking, a game that, while enjoyable and engaging, features just one simple mechanic. You drag and drop objects into their designated places. For players like my wife who consider Unpacking a comfort game, it's the final stage of this learning model that truly defines what a comfort game probably is. So the fourth and final stage is unconscious competence. This stage is where you have so much experience and practice at a skill or game that it has become natural and second nature to you. It's within this stage where you can be playing this game while doing another activity, maybe having a conversation with someone, watching or listening to something on the side, or while you are executing what you need to do and succeeding. I feel like it's at this stage when a game can truly become a comfort game, when it becomes something more zen-like, in which not much thought goes into the mechanics. This is why many relaxing and cozy games become people's comfort games. Aside from visually and audibly cozy, these games are simple and take you to the final stage of competency incredibly quickly, meaning you can naturally place those objects or play that card or plant that vegetable, all with muscle memory. That is not to say once in a while a game gets you into unconscious competence that you can stay there. That is where replayability comes in. Maybe like Slay the Spire or Into the Breach, you can adjust the difficulty levels, so even though you have the structure of the game down to a T, the rules have now slightly changed and you go back to consciously competent and the cycle starts again. So this brings to light the idea that technically any game could be considered a comfort game. For example, my friend's comfort game is League of Legends, which might seem surprising to me, but it simply means they enjoy the game enough to progress to the point of being unconsciously competent most of the time they play. This allows them to unwind without expending too much mental energy. When it comes to defining what makes a game a comfort game, the only difference between a game like League of Legends and a little to the left is the speed at which you progress through the competency model. Relaxing games are designed to make players fully grasp their mechanics quickly, giving them a head start in becoming comfort games. That's why some games are more likely to become comfort games than others. So now I believe a comfort game is more than just simple, relaxing and fun. I've come to realize that simple might not be the right word here. Instead, a comfort game requires players to reach a state somewhere between conscious and unconscious competence, so they can play without overthinking or overstressing. While simple games often facilitate this, it ultimately depends on the player's enjoyment and willingness to reach that point. That is why more complex games like League of Legends can become that game for certain gamers. It is also within this competency sweet spot that the relaxing element of comfort game emerges. While the audio and visual aspects of a game can contribute to its relaxing nature, the gameplay itself must also be relaxing. If a player is unconsciously competent and can succeed in a game with little thought or concentration, it can become a somewhat zen-like experience, meaning regardless of the game's complexity, relaxation while playing can be achieved. Lastly, while the game needs to be enjoyable, I still strongly believe that replayability is a significant factor in determining determining whether a game becomes your go-to comfort game. So if you find yourself constantly replaying and zoning out to a game while having fun and succeeding, you might have just found your comfort game. All I know is if you're having a stressful day, just grab some comfort food, put on your comfies and sit back and play whatever game you like. I'd love to know what your comfort games are, so feel free to leave yours down in the comments. And if you hadn't had enough of me saying consciously or competence or comfort and you've made it this far into the video, I hope you found this video consciously competent to satisfy your comfortable YouTube viewing needs. And if you had had enough and you're still here, then I apologise. And also, thank you for watching.